Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'm going to be comparing 3 full hypertrophy programs based on the upper lower, push-pull legs upper lower, and full body splits. These are all programs that I've shared in the past. We've got 3 days full body, 4 days upper lower, and 5 days push-pull legs upper lower. I'm going to be sharing each of the full programs with you. We'll go through a quick program analysis, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of each of the programs. Thank you to the Boostcamp app for sponsoring this video. Boostcamp is a free training app that contains a lot of programs written by popular influencers. The 3 programs we'll be talking about today are all available on the app for free. As a brief overview of these programs, in the 3-day full body program, we have 3 days where on each day you basically train all muscle groups. In the 4-day upper lower, you have upper body day, lower body day, upper body day, and lower body day. And in push-pull legs upper lower, you have a pull day, push day, leg day, and then upper body day and lower body day. Basically a combination of the push-pull legs and upper lower splits into a 5-day setup. These programs are quite different in terms of their priorities and which athletes are going to be ideal for. So we'll be talking about the unique components about each of them and which program might be best for you. Alright guys, I'm going to be doing a quick overview of each of the programs just so you can see what the layout is like. So this is Dr. Swole's 3-day full body power building program, and it's set with low volumes. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but basically you have 3 days each full body, and the program is based around a strength training structure based on the squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead press. We're using a Greyskull linear progression method here. Basically, you're benching and squatting twice per week and deadlifting and overhead pressing once per week. It's a pretty simple progression scheme here. Basically, you just have 3 sets of 5, and on the last set you have a 5+, which means you do as many reps as possible. This is a really great way to auto-regulate. That is, your training performance will accommodate how well you're feeling that day. After that, I've rounded out each of the days to be full body with some higher volume hypertrophy work. The program is really driven by your progress in your main lifts. The goal is to add 5 pounds to each of your major lifts on every workout for those who are true novices. You may have to slow down the rate of progression as you become more advanced. Note from the set volumes that this is a relatively low volume program. Alright, now that you've seen that program, let's talk about the pros and cons of this 3-day full body power building program. First off, starting with the pros of my program, this program has a power building emphasis, so it's going to be great for anyone with strength goals. And I think the power building approach is especially good for beginners. As a beginner, you're able to build both strength and hypertrophy simultaneously very well. This becomes more difficult as you become more advanced because you run into specificity issues as well as fatigue issues. But when you're just starting out, I actually do recommend having a strong strength component to your training. Getting strong will set you up to generate more volume, which is good for hypertrophy. And getting good at the main lifts is going to help you a lot in your later training. Next, the full body split is highly customizable. The power of a full body setup is that you can tweak your muscle group set volumes very easily by just changing the set numbers. And you can also subtract muscle groups from certain days if those are not your priority. Next, full body has excellent fatigue distribution, and this refers to how the stress is evenly distributed across each of the 3 days. Finally, with my Greyskull programming built into the program, this setup has a very simple use of auto-regulation that I quite like for people who are less experienced. Having that last plus set at the end of your main lifts allows you to get the most out of each of your workouts while still accommodating you on days when you're not feeling so hot. Auto-regulation allows you to get the most out of each of your training days, regardless of how strong you're feeling. Okay, now let's talk about some of the cons of this full body setup. First of all, my workouts here are quite long. This is something that tends to happen with full body splits. Since you have to hit all the muscle groups in each workout, you do have a lot of exercises. Next, with a full body split, you tend to get less of a pump with each workout since you just don't have as many sets per exercise. And finally, this power building setup is great for beginners, but as you become more advanced, this will become very fatiguing. Doing lots of heavy sets of 5s is great for strength, but as an advanced trainee, you are going to generate a lot of fatigue for the amount of stimulus that you're getting from a hypertrophy standpoint. So if you're an advanced bodybuilder and your goal is purely hypertrophy, this program will be less efficient. You'll likely also need more volume, but that's another issue. Okay guys, next we're going to look at Dr. Swole's 4-day upper lower program. This is a Boostcamp moderate volume version. This program is set around 4 days, upper body day 1, lower body day 1, upper body day 2, and lower body day 2. And you'll see that each of the days is centered around one of our major lifts: bench press, squat, overhead press, and deadlift. A couple things to note here. This program brings in the top set back off method. This is a setup I really like for combining some of your strength and hypertrophy priority together. The idea is that you warm to one top heavy set, in this example a heavy set of 5 to 8 reps, and then you take about 10% off the bar and continue doing some more sets to add volume. This way you're able to get a bit of specific training with that heavier load on the top set while still accumulating volume for hypertrophy later on. This program offers a great example of how to incorporate top set back off training into your program. So if you want to dip your toes into this kind of strategy, try this one out. The other modifications I want to point out is that I've moved my bicep and some of my side delt training from upper body days onto lower body days. This solves some of the major problems of the traditional upper lower split. It evens out your days so your upper body days aren't so long, and so you can properly emphasize your upper body. And it allows you to train your biceps when they're fresh and not fatigued after pulling movements for bicep training on upper body days. And it allows you to get a higher 4 times per week frequency for your bicep and side delt training, which I think these muscle groups do well with. Okay, now let's talk about the pros and cons of my upper lower program. Starting with the pros. This program is very flexible, and I think this is one of the big features of the upper lower split that I really like. And this largely comes from the fact that there's no interference between your upper and lower body days. This means you're able to shuffle workouts around throughout the week, and this works really well for someone who has an unpredictable schedule like myself. This program also has very good fatigue distribution, not quite as good as full body, but dividing the body into upper lower does work quite well, especially after making some of the modifications that I described. Okay, now let's touch on the cons of this upper lower program. With the upper lower split as traditionally written, you tend to have long upper body days. This is just because there are more muscles to train in your upper body than in your lower body. However, this issue actually is solved in my program here. As I mentioned, this is a modified upper lower split, and since we moved our bicep and side delt work onto leg days, we even out the day lengths. This allows you to balance your emphasis between the upper and lower body. In addition, this also allows you to train your biceps when they're fresh and not fatigued after pulling movements. Note that while we did move bicep training over, triceps are still trained after pushing movements, and this is a disadvantage. The reason I didn't move tricep training over as well is that having sore triceps is more likely to interfere with pushing movements on other days. Okay, now let's talk about my push-pull legs upper lower program, and this one's set with moderate volumes. You've got 5 days here: pull day, push day, lower body day 1, upper body day, and lower body day 2. Each of these workouts are centered around a major lift, so your row, bench press, squat, overhead press, and deadlift. Again, there are a few modifications here to point out to the base split. We've moved over bicep training from pull days onto push days. This is really convenient in this split since push days come after pull days. You can just move bicep training over. That way you won't be training them when they're fatigued after pulling movements. And you'll see that we've swapped it for some upright row side delt work. Pull days tend to be short, so we've also moved over some calf and ab training onto this day. You'll see that I've also moved some side delt work onto lower body day. And then I've swapped some bicep and side delt work for my calf and ab training on upper body days. This evens out your days and allows you to train your biceps when they're fresh, and also gives you a high frequency for side delt training to accommodate those higher volumes. Okay, now let's talk about the pros and cons of my push-pull legs upper lower program. Now, as you saw, this program actually has similar volumes to the upper lower program, just spread out over more days. However, a 5-day setup does allow you to accommodate higher volumes if you do need so. Typically, beginners don't actually need this much volume, so I usually don't recommend them being in the gym more than about 4 days per week. Next, the push-pull legs upper lower split balances the upper and lower body very well in a built-in fashion. As you saw in my modified upper lower split, we had to make some modifications to the base split to even out the upper and lower body day emphasis. But with push-pull legs upper lower, this is built in, since with your push-pull leg segment, you have 2 upper body days to 1 lower body day. Finally, one little unique feature of this program with push-pull legs upper lower is that you get some priority to a heavy rowing movement. When you have a dedicated pull day, you have the ability to put a heavy rowing movement or back movement first. This can be nice if you like to program your rows heavy, to build some strength, or even as an accessory to your deadlift. Okay, now let's talk about the cons of my push-pull legs upper lower program. First of all, with the push-pull legs upper lower split, since you're bringing in 2 splits together, you do have an asymmetric week. This isn't that big of a deal, but there is quite a bit of a difference between the different days, and you may have to adapt to this. You'll also see that the distribution of volumes between the days for the same muscle groups is not the same. That is, on your upper body day later in the week, you only have a few sets of each of the muscle groups, whereas on your push and pull days, you're able to accumulate more sets for each of the muscle groups. So your performance across the week won't necessarily be comparable. Next, similar to the upper lower program, you have triceps coming after pushing movements. As you saw, I've moved biceps away from back training, which solves one of the inherent disadvantages of the push-pull leg split itself. And finally, you do have uneven days with this program. You tend to have short pull days since there are just fewer muscle groups that you're training there, and tough leg days since you only have 2 leg days in the week. Note that we have addressed this somewhat by moving around some of our smaller muscle group volume. Now, all of these programs are available for free on the Boostcamp app. Boostcamp is a free training app that allows you to take your favorite programs to the gym and run them from your phone. You can track your progress and run preset set and weight progressions. I've included a built-in mesocycle into the program, so you can actually see the progression week by week and start implementing some basic periodization. Now, in terms of which of these programs you should be choosing for yourself, the full body power building program is really well set up for a beginner or someone who has strength goals. If you're training 3 days per week, I do think full body is the best split to run, just because it makes sure you get that higher frequency in, and it synergizes really well with basic strength programming setups. I also think as a beginner, it's really good to follow a power building approach, just because you're going to be able to build strength and hypertrophy simultaneously. Now, the upper lower program is going to work really well for someone who has an unpredictable schedule. If you know that you'll need to shuffle workouts around for the week, upper lower works really well, and I've had a lot of success with this in the past. I'm actually currently running a modified upper lower split because of this. Since I work unpredictable 24-hour shifts as a doctor, I need to be able to move around my workouts and still have good productive training. Finally, push-pull legs might be a good option if you are more advanced, like intermediate and beyond, and you want to spread out your work over more days. A point I want to emphasize is that you want to choose a program that you can comfortably commit to. That is, I would rather you follow a 4-day program where you're hitting all of your workouts consistently, rather than tell yourself that you're going to follow a 6-day program, but end up being really sporadic. Now, if you're thinking about running one of these programs, I do have dedicated videos for each of them where I go more into depth into the program analysis. The most recent one was the upper lower split program, and you can see my dedicated video on that program here.